Yeah, generally we do just 1 or 2 slides, and then most of it's kind of back and forth discussion.
Makes sense.
And I just started the recording, and we still have a little bit before we get started. Hey, everybody, as you're joining, typically I like to start us about a minute past the hour, just to give people time to get online and so on. Let me see here. I want to see if I can turn my. There we go. Anybody doing anything fun for Halloween?
This.
Did you say this? Good answer. I like it.
We're dressing up as interested people and listening to a webinar, right?
It's Lake Erie. Lake Erie can be tropical maybe in July.
It's true.
All right, we're at noon. I'm going to give it 1 more minute. Let's see who else joins, and then we'll get started. Sound good? Hey, Len.
Hello. Happy Halloween.
Happy Halloween. All right, let's go ahead and get started here. Welcome everyone to the Halloween edition of CI Mastermind Live. Glad that you could all join, and hope that you all enjoy some trick-or-treating later today. Let's see. I will pull up my slides. Give me a minute here to share my screen. That's not what I wanted to do. It's always confusing. Share window versus share screen. There we go. Has everyone seen that?
Yep.
Awesome. Awesome. So one logistical note here, interestingly enough, I am not at my office, and I do not have my laptop charger. So, it could get dicey towards the end of this call. I'll dial back in on my cell phone if you lose me, but you're in good hands with Mike either way. I think I should at least make it through about 2/3 of the call before any real trouble happens. Welcome to CI Mastermind Live. Our session's recorded. You may have seen we'll use clips from these recordings to promote the program and get more CI folks like you all, or CI interested folks like you all on these calls. I always appreciate being able to see your face. Our guests appreciate being able to see your face, because we try to make this very interactive, and so seeing someone and being able to interact with them on video is much better than just sound. So It's my request to turn on your cameras. The session's 45 minutes. I'm going to do an introduction. I'm going to hand it over to Mike Shannon, and then Mike is going to talk through our topic for the day. One of the things I forget to do sometimes is to encourage people to use the chat, ask questions in the chat. I'll try and answer things in the chat if I can. But other people should be able to answer things in the chat as well. I think it's good practice. And I also, we did this once before. I think it'd be great for everyone just to, put what role they play at what company and maybe where you're from in the chat, so people kind of get to know who you are. Okay. So again, CI Mastermind Live, it's a 5 to 20 person group. We're doing these monthly. We've been doing them for at least a year now, I think, Chris. We'll have to look and see when our anniversary was. We continue to get really good feedback on it, host a variety of continuous improvement related topics. And we really try and do real-time solving. And I follow up with folks afterwards oftentimes from the sessions, and that's what I hear is the most valuable of these sessions, is getting some real-time information to go and solve the problems that you're currently having. So we will continue with this format into 2025. Always ask that everyone respects their peers, that you think about the information that you share, that you're careful with that information, and that you're on here as a engaged participant, interacting with the conversation, adding color and value to the discussion. That makes this better for everybody. I want to talk a little bit about our Lunch and Learn program. I've discussed this before with you all, at least the folks that are regulars on the call here. We launched this in July. The first one is wrapping up. We're going to wrap up mid-November. The feedback's been really good. I think what stuck with me the most is there's a lot of folks in companies that have never really been challenged to do a good 5 whys. Everyone goes, yeah, I know 5 whys. And then when you give them an exercise and they struggle with it, or they give you logic that you're like, I don't know if that's really a string of logic, it forces them to think more deeply about it. And even the branches and the multiple roots that can come off of a root cause has been really feedback that we've received from people that's been really valuable, and where I think they're learning the most. So the group is actually wrapping up now. We're doing cause and effect diagrams and SIPOCs, and we're going to finish with Paretos. And it's been great. And so I wanted to let you all know that, so that you understand our format, which is literally a lunch and learn at noontime Central. Sometimes people are on there eating their lunch. That's cool. We're doing real exercises that we provide to them and giving them real-time feedback on those exercises, and then giving them time to do some Q&A. So it is Lean and Six Sigma learning built into the workday. And so that's the format. We'll be starting another session mid-January. Again, I'm going to cap the group size around 12 people. There's 4 sessions a month. It is all virtual, so you do need a laptop, and as you've heard me before, make sure it's got a camera. And if you are interested, or someone you know might be interested, or you think you'd like to put this in front of your management, I'd appreciate it if you'd reach out to me after the call, and I can share more with you. Okay, any questions on that? All right, just another heads up here. I've got a couple upcoming events for those of you in the Chicago area. I believe some of you are. I will be speaking at the Chai Supply Chain Summit on November 13th. The topic is going to be establishing continuous improvement. This was a topic that I did, I want to say 2 months ago, and the feedback from our CI Mastermind Live group was that this was a really good topic. So I'm going to do it more broadly, and I'm going to do it at this Chai Supply Chain Summit. Mike Shannon will also be at the summit, so you're going to get to know Mike a little bit today. He will be there as well. And then I'm doing the topic again at the ASQ, American Society of Quality, Fox Valley section on December 3rd. So if you have any interest in attending those events, reach out to me and I'll get you the registration information. Questions there? Okay, and then lastly, our next session is November 21st. Typically, we've been doing the last Thursday of the month, but that is Thanksgiving, so we've moved it to the 21st. This is the last session of 2024, so we skipped December. We'll restart in January. We've got Scott Herbst back. He was a fan favorite. He's going to talk about why do great ideas fail, unlocking secrets of resistance. I know we all face that in our continuous improvement work, and we'll have a registration question as always so that you can put the resistance challenges that you face at your work in there, and Scott will work through those with you live on the 21st. I'm looking forward to that one. Scott does such a great job with this stuff. Okay. That's everything from my side. I'm going to now hand it over to Mike Shannon and let him do a little bit of introduction on himself. I would just tell you that Mike and I have been working together for a few years now, and he is a supply chain guru. So you can ask him all kinds of questions about distribution, warehousing, demand planning, and so on. And he's going to have the knowledge. So I hope I set the bar high enough for you there, Mike.
We'll see, man. I appreciate the intro. Let me do my slide sharing. I think that's the fun part of this game, right? Is to have a full slide deck here. I'm not going to be ad nauseum slides though. And then Matt, keep me honest, right? I think this is meant to be a dialogue.
That's
right. And I want to encourage that. So I have topics here, overviews here, but really the details are going to come from hearing about your business and your needs and compare that to what I've seen in the industry as well. So I'll do a little background on myself as we go through this. And again, I don't want to read this out. I've been in the industry for quite a while, 24 plus years. I am an industrial engineer, went to NIU. I've been in 3PL logistics. I've been in distribution, running facilities from a healthcare perspective. I was at CDW for quite a bit, did consulting. Now I'm kind of more in the automation space. So I've kind of been there, done that a little bit across the supply chain. Got myself a certified supply chain professional certification. Fun stuff to do that. Anyone that wants to go through that, I will say it's a lot of memorization, but when you go through that, it is a great thing to learn. It's more about connecting the dots across the supply chain space. And then I've got my PMP as well. So this is a little bit about me. Let's get into some topics though. And really what I want to talk about, again, this is just an agenda. It's just meant to help us articulate a little bit of the flow. What is supply chain excellence? Talk about some key areas of focus, things like demand forecasting, things like inventory management, things like supplier management. We may have different areas where we spend more of our time. I'd like to hear more about how your business runs and how, you do some, maybe not all, and what does that mean for you? And how maybe there's some steps to take towards, how can you be better as an organization? What are your thoughts on that? I've got some case studies from places I've been. Just want to showcase some differences between those organizations, right? And how I think each business really approaches this differently. They got some future trends and Q&A, right? I know it's a fast session. Matt's going to keep me honest with making sure it's dialogue. So I appreciate that. And please interrupt me, anyone, at any time as we go through this stuff. With that, I'm just going to give you the key aspects of supply chain excellence. And I do want to get some feedback after this, right? If you look at it as a holistic program, right? You think of it as, I've got to use a lot of data to drive any decisions I want to make. Now that's great, from a definition standpoint. Wouldn't it be great if we just had all this great data to drive decisions? I just feel like most times when I engage with customers or clients or places I've worked before, we might not even have the data, or we're not capturing it today, or the quality's not great, right? Something in that data side may or may not be there. So when you talk about the strategy of having supply chain excellence, right? Data is a big part of it. So data governance, does your corporation or your business have a strategy? How are you going to go forward and do those things? And if you don't have data today, how do you go collect it? Is there other sources out there you can grab? So I think that's a big part of this, obviously one of the main topics of the conversation. But why do this, right? Efficiency and cost optimization, right? You want to do this because you don't want to have excess, right? You want to lower your waste. You want to have your costs go down. You want to increase your process productivity. You want to do those things. I'll also say you want to be able to be responsive to the market. The best story to tell here is the COVID implications, right? When COVID hit, nobody was able to be responsive to that, and how businesses really had a dynamic shift in terms of like, are they still in business? Can they survive this? How do they change their model? How do they get people to show up to work, right? Now, things like that are not what these types of systems are built for, right? They're built for things maybe such as strikes at the port, um, supply chain challenges, manufacturing supplier issues, challenges of those natures, not something like a worldwide pandemic, right? But those are another aspect as well. So as you go through this, again, it's interesting to me. So I've been, again, around this space for quite some time, and sustainability and compliance have now kind of shot up in terms of its level of importance. It's very interesting, right? So some of the things that I've seen, regulations from like California, for instance, zero emissions type of approaches, how to become, zero carbon emissions by this much time. How do you offset that? Companies are really investing a lot of time and energy into this because customers care about it. And that kind of leads into that last one, with the customer centric side of it is like, what are your customers want? What are they desiring? What are they telling you? So that's me pausing. Let me just cover that. Matt, you wanna maybe create some dialogue here, or how do you wanna?
Yeah. So let's go right to some of the responses to our question. And our question this month was, how do you currently handle demand variability, seasonal fluctuations, and unexpected changes in market trends? And we also asked, are there any specific tools or methodology that you used? And I'm going to put Scott Winter on the spot. And Scott, you said year holidays, the winter season also is peak season. We ramp up production in October and stock our warehouse with inventory based on historical sales trends, forecast sales, accounting during the plant shutdown for weeks where product will not be produced and shipped. Changes in market trends, we have target levels account for systemically over we will not ship as much, under as we'll ship more probably. So I'll just kind of like, so Scott, sounds like you guys have a system. Are there any challenges you wanted to highlight there for Mike?
Or Scott, do you remember saying all that stuff?
I don't remember any of that.
Right.
I didn't write that. Sounded better in my head anyway. Yeah, I mean, in a nutshell, it's kind of like a perfect storm in our winter season. We're in respiratory medical device arena, so we get peak season respiratory demand on the business, and we also have our plant shut down over the holidays for a couple weeks, and um, and then we have employees who want to go take the holidays with their family. Shame on them. But so yeah, kind of all of this hits at one time for us, I think. So it creates some definite challenges in the business.
Scott, do you see it where you're building a ton of inventory, like from a standpoint of, and I'm not sure exactly what your role with the organization is, but like how do they plan for that? Like they just build a ton of inventory and sits on it, and then just let it kind of deplete itself through the holiday season. Is that how they do it?
Yeah, basically we start shipping in September, October, or manufacturing in September, October, and start shipping early and just slowly build the inventory through December. And then they shut down, and we just kind of forecast accordingly to do that.
Do you guys spike your inventory to the point where you've got to take additional space down from like a warehouse standpoint or anything, or is it you can handle that kind of
Yeah.
peak?
Yeah, our infrastructure is set up for that.
Interesting. Matt, that makes me think of, being able to have that forecasting knowledge in the plant shutdowns. A lot of times it's that peak in the valleys that create this world where now you had to have a building. I'll use some examples from my 3PL days, right? Let's just say you have 50,000 square feet. And the reason why you have that 50,000 square feet is for 2 months of the year. But you really could be at 25,000 or 30,000 square feet, right? And that's a cost per square foot a lot of times from an inventory perspective. I don't know, Scott, that may not apply to you guys, right? If you already have a building, you've already got infrastructure, you're just able to use it and leverage it, that's great. But I'm thinking about from other customer perspectives, right? Having space just for a certain percent of the year sometimes is really hard to maintain from a cost perspective.
And Mike, how do they justify that when they spike inventory, versus trying to be more just in time?
And that's a great point and a segue to another slide, right? So I'm gonna jump around here on these slides, but like for
go
me,
ahead.
inventory management, the ability to know some companies can take on that risk. And Scott, you mentioned that it's from the respiratory medical device perspective. Let's just say the cost of your unit. I mean, what is it? Is it a couple $100 or a couple $1,000 for these kind of units?
The device itself is in the thousands, and the consumable products that go with it are in the hundreds.
And what that does, what I've seen is that someone from a financial standpoint knows that there's a decent amount of inventory on hand, which is a cost of capital on hand that they're just deciding and choosing to take on, which could create, is that okay from a balance sheet perspective? Can they afford to have that much inventory built up over that course of time? That's where I see a lot of those conversations going, is what are we willing to take on from a financial standpoint? So just to go and maybe build on that a little bit more, right? I have always been more on the warehouse distribution side. And let me see if this resonates with the team. I don't know if any of us here are operating through a warehouse distribution network, but I've been with several organizations where they do their planning and their buying with the idea that the warehouse has infinite capacity. So is anybody in that world where they are treated such that the warehouse can just take as much stuff as they could possibly buy? No? Okay, great. That's good. That's fantastic, because I'll tell you right now that it's a tough world to be in when you're like, whoa, 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 I can't fit any more of this stuff in here. Stop buying. But yet, you had buyers that were really trying to drive revenue, trying to drive customer kind of, having the inventories when the customer needs it, they can have it, that component. So, so I think, Matt, we've maybe answered that initial question from Scott.
Yeah, I was gonna say that's actually a good segue to Alan Marsh. You had stated that you use MRP, starting a journey to utilizing JDE MRP, which I don't know, Mike, if you've got familiarity with that, but also they're doing S&OP process, and then everything else is ad hoc. And Alan, can you add a little more detail to that response that you gave us?
Sure. Yeah. Can you hear me, by the way? I'm
Yes,
using my
can hear you.
headphones. Okay, great. Yeah. So it's a little bit quick background is that we installed JDE. We put it in various places, and we had various, I would say, usages of JDE. Sometimes they just do their Excel spreadsheets versus using the system. And then we're kind of on this journey of getting everybody standardized, get everybody using JD Edwards and using the process that it's kind of built around, which is the forecasting, and then using the messages to drive production and everything like that, and to balance the supply and demand. And we kind of go through the same things that others have mentioned. I think Scott mentioned it, the seasonal peaks and valleys, yep, and labor issues, and right when we're peaking, that kind of stuff. So it's a lot of times we don't trust the system, or we can manage it better than the system. And it's great for their silo, what they're looking at, and then they don't see the big picture of everything, connecting it.
That's a great point. So Alan, is there a buying team or a group that's in charge of like this behavior change, right? So like how many people
Yeah.
are we talking about changing the behavior?
Quite a few. We're
Okay.
at like 34 sites globally, different languages. And then we are, it's a fairly small team that's trying to do this.
It's a big change, and there's a lot on, Matt and I both know change management is paramount and
Yeah.
extremely difficult. And I will say that, one of the things I've got a little bit later, I'll show you now, some of the case studies. When I was with CDW, that's what we did. We went on a journey, and we only had 50 buyers, so it was a different kind of compared to you with 34 global operational units potentially, right? So there's a lot of like headcount associated with these people that are buying.
Yeah.
But it was exactly that. I know more about the business than this computer does, so I'm going to just continue to use my Excel spreadsheets and my product knowledge to get me into my next buying cycle.
Yep.
And
Yep.
it was and I'll be honest, we use consulting firms to come help us with the change management, because it really was, how do you continue to educate and support the idea that we want the system to do at least 60 to 80% of the buying for you, and you can still do the 20 to 40% of the specialized buying as a really smart person with product knowledge. And so that was a little bit of the change that helped a little bit, saying, the buys that you just do on this constant frequency that have a really good run rate, you've got really good history, you don't need some fancy algorithm to decide if it's, related to, how the stock market's going or other factors in the industry or chip costs or things like that, raw material costs, nothing to do with that. Just set it and forget it, we used to call it. Those components was how we started selling the message. And then the idea was, when we started looking at the delta, we said, what makes those 20 to 40%? What makes them special? Well, it's school season, and I need to know if I'm buying Chromebooks with touchscreens or Chromebooks without touchscreens. And that's a big risk from their standpoint, right? They're like, we're going to base our buys on what we know and where we think the business is headed. And so we would just talk to them about what other information would be helpful to feed into the system to give you knowledge there. So you could just see it in a one place, one click type environment. So I'm going real far and deep into this one, but I was really passionate about it because we try to understand that, right?
And this is a really important one that I wanted to go back to. You said trust the system, and I thought maybe, Mike, you might be able to explore a little bit on what happens when you don't trust the system, because that's and you're right. Like, this is what I think you've pointed out when we've done kind of walks through warehouses and things like that. Is you spend all this money in the system, and then you don't use it, and it creates these downstream problems. So maybe you could explain a little bit more about what the trust the system really means.
Yeah, I'll do that. And Michael's got a question too, so he wants to
Yeah,
chime in.
there's
So
something there, Michael.
Michael, you want to go
Well,
first, actually?
Yeah, I mean, it's more a contribution than a question, if that's okay.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, so I have a lot of experience working with demand, supply planning, implementing S&OP. And the first question when making a change with the planners or with the business is the business meeting its results, right? If it's not, right, that becomes the giant why to make the change. And then if the planners don't trust the system, it's really important to dig in and understand why. Right? It's either forecast, safety stock, replenishment cycle, or target fill rates. So it's, I think the fork in the road is when a planner says, "Hey, I don't trust the system," and somebody says, "Okay," as opposed to, "Okay, well, why? Why don't you trust the system, and how do we build that trust in the system by working with the planners?"
A great point. And we would also talk about how the more you feed the information into the system, the smarter it can become. So the not trusting is where it's yes, it can't do all the things you can do. It's not supposed to. Let it do the things that you can enable it to do. to give you better insights and better knowledge. And that's the thing about trust. It's like it's not absolute. So we had to change a lot of our discussions where this is not a mandate that the system has to produce the answer. The system produces information to a planner or buyer to make a final judgment call. So I think what really keyed us on this, maybe turning the corner on the change management, was every single PO that was cut was approved by the planner and the buyer. And when they start feeling confident in those repeated buys that were starting to work well with the system, they would allow those to be automated. And then so they could continue to maintain control through the process. But I think it's different for everyone in every situation and based on the human factor of it, right? We all know human behavior. Some people may not trust it just because it's something new. So we had some issues where people just weren't comfortable using the computer and just wanted to use their historical knowledge, right? So we had to upskill some people. Some people decided to take other roles in other organizations. Like it's an interesting dynamic because it's the human element that's involved.
So it makes all this fun.
Right.
Lori Lake, and you got your hand up.
Yeah, just a quick comment. I used to support SAP APO Go Lives, and getting people off their spreadsheets was a hard thing to do. And so one person said, SAP is wrong. I'm using my spreadsheet. So I sat down with her, and for about a decade, that company missed any inventory that was crossing the US to Canada. So once you showed that the system is more correct than your spreadsheet, I got dozens of people to start trusting the system.
What was the impact and result of that miss, by the way?
Well, they had to explain to upper management why they were wrong for a decade. So, I mean, financial reporting was off because they weren't reporting any inventory in transit. And so even the production schedules were wrong because the inventory was wrong. Major implications. So once you show them how smart the system is, then you can convert them from off the spreadsheets.
But it takes time and reinforcement, and there's no simple tool for doing that. But I think you got to find those pain points and say them, and then also you got to reinforce what Mike was saying earlier, which is data gets better as you use it, right? So if you're not using it, it's going to be as bad as, if you don't trust it now, it's not going to get any better. Jeff, you got your hand up.
Yeah, I ran into a similar situation at Goodrich Aerospace. I was basically an internal consultant helping them improve their business and manufacturing processes. And one of the first things people told me was the ERP system doesn't work. Well, it wasn't an SAP or Oracle with all the bells and whistles, but the basic logic worked. So I mapped the entire process from order to remittance, from the time we took an order to the time we shipped product and got paid for it. And the first person I sat down with was the order entry person, the sales order entry. And so I said, well, show me what you do. And she had like 7 pieces of information that she was supposed to enter. So she entered 5 of them and said, okay, I'm done. And I said, well, wait a minute. What about these 2 pieces? And she said, oh, I don't use those. I don't need those. Well, guess what? 5 steps down the line, the planner did. So the planner worked outside the system because of the data integrity issues, and it became kind of a vicious circle. And so I showed them that the end-to-end map and try to get them to understand how each of those steps is linked. And it made some difference, but not as much as I had hoped.
That's a great call out. I mean, I think, that order to cash cycle that you're talking about, and seeing that there's people ahead of you in the process and there's people behind you in the process, and that you have an important role to play within that process. I mean, it's a great from a visionary standpoint to understand that, there's not just the individual role that you have. It's even when Michael said it, right? It's the rallying around the business. Hey, we've been missing our goals. We could be increasing our revenues, and we could be paying you more money. We could have a better bonus program. We could just do other things. If we can enable these things and unlock this potential, help me do that, right? And to your point, Jeff, it seems to be different for everybody. And again, but pointing out the steps, I think that's a great great point, a great piece to make.
Alan, did you get anything useful that you can take back there?
I got some good wording that I might incorporate, right? So that definitely helpful. So thank you.
Awesome. I want to jump over to Lori Lakin. Lori, you just simply wrote statistical forecasting, and I'd be interested in, if you can share anything that you've done on statistical forecasting, and maybe what works and what doesn't work. And then Mike, if you can add some additional thoughts there as well.
Okay, so I'm not saying this to brag, put it that way. I used to be a VMI coordinator, so I had about 17 people under me. And my boss came and said, every year we get complaints. Boy, this might give away the company, sorry. We get complaints we're not sending out enough clinics in the fall, but then we oversend in the spring. So I looked at all kinds of data, mostly from our demand forecasting department. And I showed them seasonality that went way beyond tissues. This is an odd example, but very true. For feminine care, they thought sales were flat unless they had promotions. And the truth is mothers buy daughters feminine care products to go to college with. And so there's a huge spike in August. And demand planning, I went to the leader and she said, where did you get all this information from? I said, 90% from your department.
It was there all along.
Yeah, but my issue is I've been I've got a lot of 20 years of supply chain experience, logistics, but I'm not real familiar with global. So I didn't know if you could give any input of like the global supply chain and forecasting.
Yeah, I think that what we were finding is more than anything else, it's what is the signal that drives the action, right? So you just pointed out from your example that, there's an activity that's happening which is causing demand. And so that concept does not have to stay within the States. That concept happens across the globe, right? In terms of what other events may cause or may create opportunities for you to see a shift in demand. And I will say things like, no matter where you are in whatever developing country you're in, housing and development obviously drives a lot from suppliers of materials that are used to build and support the housing market. Things like, if you think about my slide going back to these companies I've worked for, right? In the beverage space, for instance, the beverage space is very interesting because it's based on population growth. And if you think about the population growth globally, out of how many potential soda drinkers, what percent of them are going to choose a Coca-Cola product versus an alternative product? They've got very good statistics that go along with that. So they've got a global demand planning program that they have in place, which is exactly the same as the one in the US, but it has other signals to it, right? So if you think about how they develop their network, each one has their own where they get their raw materials from, where they're going to produce it at, where they're going to bottle it, where they're going to distribute it, and they create these nodes or these networks that then support that customer demand, because there's never a point where you should walk into a convenience store or a grocery store and ever see that it's not on the shelf and also that it's not fresh. They've got a laser focus on keeping things rotated to the point where they are disposing quite a bit of their product because it is past its freshness date. So depending on the store, depending on the type of usage in that market, you may have a product that was bottled within the last week. And it's pretty amazing to see that supply chain in action. So I would simply say that it's not so much different from a global standpoint. It's just more data points, right? There's other things and other factors that get woven in from other markets that then drive that demand. And I'd say demand because depending on what your business is in, you've got different things that trigger it, right? Going back to school applies for certain individuals, companies, but not others. I will say going back to school is a big impact for CDW, right? Chromebooks, things that are going to be used in the school. monitors, things that are computers and desktops, and all those things are part of the back to school push, which is its own type of process. But there's many other factors that happen in place too. Buying cycles of organizations, right? And there's just so much. So I guess long way of me saying that globally, it's just more data, just more inputs.
Okay, great. Thank you.
I kind of have maybe it's a tangential point or question for you, Mike, which is when I was at Motorola and I worked a little bit in our distribution center, the saying was that no one ever gets fired for having too much inventory, but plenty have been fired because we didn't make our sales right and it wasn't on the shelf. And so I think about that in context of just in time, and just in time, is heavily out of automotive, and it assumes to some extent that you have this sort of consistency in demand that you could produce a statistical forecast that's going to be correct, and so that just in time system can work, but it goes very much against the way the sales team wants to operate, and frankly, the way the incentives of the company work. And I'm just wondering that just in time versus making sure you have it on the shelf or stocking up. What's your experience with that? And is there a balance between the two?
Yeah, I'll respond first. I think the group may want to chime in here as well.
Okay, that's fine.
I'll use the example here in the middle. So thus, us in Chicagoland don't know who Lock Supply is. However, if you're out in the Oklahoma area and different parts of the country, Lock Supply is a HVAC plumbing electrical supplier. Their business model is customer satisfaction comes number one, first priority. So guess what they have? A ton of inventory. They have chosen as a company to build quite a bit of inventory, not just on-hand inventory, safety stock inventory. And anytime that they have a supplier issue, they've got backup suppliers that are ready to come in and back that primary up. So primary and secondary supplier network. Because in their opinion, if someone goes into one of their branches and the product is not there, they will go to another branch in a different company and they will get the product there and they will go and become a lifelong customer of theirs, which is interesting model, right? So that's
my continuous improvement bones get upset hearing that,
correct.
It doesn't fit my dogma.
And it's so interesting. The building currently that they're building in Oklahoma City is 1 million square feet. And it does not need to be 1 million square feet, but they are very laser focused on this, and them as an organization have adopted this strategy. Now, let me quickly shift to just in time and then get it to the group. Just in time in the automotive space, I've been in automotive space for quite some time, currently still in it. You look in the supply chain from the point of the assembly and you go backwards in that supply chain, somebody has a bottleneck, somebody has inventory,
Yes.
Someone has a buffer, and it's there. It's just that they don't want to feel it at the production site or at the assembly site, so they are forcing that slug, if you want to call it that, or inventory down the line so that someone else holds that buffer and then feeds them the inventory as they need it. So just in time seems to be a great concept. I think that only Toyota has got it close to being 100%. No one else really can say that from what I've seen.
Well, and I would add to that, at some point you get down to the raw material supplier and you can't imagine that they're working just in time, right? I mean, you're talking about mining and, forestry kind of things. Like these aren't just in time practices.
Well, I don't know if anyone in the group has a comment to that, right? I mean, I kind of just said that, inventory is a thing, and obviously just in time, if that's anyone has experience there. But to me, it all sounds cool, but then in practice, you don't see it because there's risk associated with just in time as well. Lori looks like she's got a question or comment.
I was not planning on talking on this. So I used to be a pulp buyer, and the woman that I took over for, we had monthly turns end of the month. So she would put the outside warehouse as full as she could with pulp and then not order anything the week before the turns number. So you had delivery costs to an outside warehouse, transfer costs, inventory costs. I told my boss, I'm not doing that. I am going to do this. You won't regret it. And she let me order it as needed. So I think it comes down to employee responsibility. Same thing, I did a lot of transfer products to different plants and warehouses. And it was the same thing. People were only looking out 5 days to see where the shortages would be. And so they fought fires all day long. I just changed one little button to look out 10 days. So I never had one rush. We had low inventory with 100% customer service. So I really think it's training people. I believe in lean. So don't tell me just in time doesn't work. Because I have used it many, many times and I've trained people to use it. You have to have your trust of your managers and your supervisors. And I mean, if you think you're going to get dinged for something, think of how to improve the process and then you're going to be okay.
Lori, what was the driver? What was the incentive that drove that previous buyer to do things the way she was doing it?
Just for job security. I mean,
Because it kept her out of trouble.
Yeah, her turns look fine, but in reality, how she was ordering stuff was a much higher expense than anybody knew because nobody checked it before.
And you know, this will be next month's discussion, but you know, those incentives are what drives resistance. And you know, you can have all the technical knowledge on how a system like just in time should work, or you can have a great method for getting your data and doing statistical forecasts. But if you're not addressing the underlying people incentives, the system won't work.
Correct.
And I know we're out of time, and I think I saw a question here in the chat that talks about the future of using AI in the playing in the future. It's got a tremendous role. In fact, the question of whether or not, Alan, in the JD Edwards system you have, they have an AI component to it, but most of those off-the-shelf systems now have an AI component. And again, it needs training. Remember, AI just doesn't come smart. You've got to train it. So that's really a part of a lot of these tool sets now, is to incorporate that AI into it. There's a lot more to that, though. Go ahead, Matt.
Well, actually, we are just about out of time, but Mike,
Yes.
There were quite a few questions, and Lynn, you kind of had one around, you know, you don't have a formal system, or there isn't a formal method, and there's a lot of headache. Are there a base set of tools that you would say any firm should have to do good demand planning?
For me, very simply having a strategy, and then being able to know that, you know, the strategy then drives data. So for me, from a standpoint of having a strategy of how you want to go to market, how you want to listen to your customers, then having data behind it to what you need to collect to be smart about it. To me, that's the start of the journey. Once you have the data, it's the ability to take that Excel spreadsheet and turn it into something more. Because really, at the end of the day, it's a multivariable, complex problem you're trying to solve with a lot of factors that play a role. But honestly, you don't have one factor that may drive it. Maybe other factors that drive it more than others. It's very custom to your business. So I go ahead, Matt.
So basically your ERP and a strategy that supports how you pull data from the ERP and maybe model it in an Excel tool is what I heard you say.
It's a start to it. I really do think it's a complex algorithm that needs more than Excel to maybe solve for it. But because your business is going to be unique, I would simply say getting the help and driving you towards what are you trying to achieve, and then having people help you walk through, well, here's how you get there. I think Alan can say it. I think Michael can say it in the past that, you know, having people that have been there, done that to help with the change management, to know which way you're going and how to get there, what tool that is to get you there, and then how you're going to train people to use it to go and make an impact to your business.
Let's go ahead and leave it at that. Thank you everybody for joining. Thank you, Mike, for hosting the discussion and guiding us through. And I hope everyone got something they could take back to their companies and utilize. And I will see you all again next month. Happy Halloween.
Thank you.
Thanks, everybody. Happy
care.
Halloween.
Thank
Happy
you.
Halloween,
Bye,
everyone.
everyone.
Oh, Tim's got the shirt. Very nice.
Nice.
Bye-bye.